What does consistency mean? Is it a state of mind you achieve? A pattern you intentionally replicate every morning? Or maybe a natural disposition? Honestly, we don't know. But for the best scorer in basketball, consistency is...
My whole life is consistent. Everything I do, from what I eat to when I sleep, to my recovery, to my loved ones, everything's consistent. And it's a routine for me at this point.
Gilgeous-Alexander, as smooth as it gets.
He hardly ever sprints. Sometimes he speeds up, and sometimes he slows down. But reaching top speed is irrelevant to him. He doesn't need to get anywhere first, and gaps in the defense are luxuries he could live without. Any sliver is a catastrophic breach when the ball is in his hands. The best scorer in basketball doesn't search for threes. Sometimes he finds them within the flow of the offense, and sometimes he takes them off the dribble. But the modern shot diet doesn't appeal to him. In his eyes, everything inside the arc is perpetually open. A bucket is always waiting one sidestep away or one pump fake removed. He doesn't need the extra point. He'll never run out of clean looks. And 2 weeks ago, the best scorer in basketball broke a record that stood for 63 years. And the game hardly blinked. We expect this from him now. His greatness has been normalized, and his never-ending stream of tough shots has become background noise for the regular season. Do the same thing long enough, and even greatness goes unnoticed. The first thing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did as an NBA player was get traded. Literal minutes after walking across the stage and putting on a Charlotte Hornets hat, SGA was sent to the Los Angeles Clippers. At the time, the deal seemed like a mundane draft day swap. Gilgeous-Alexander had shown potential at Kentucky, especially later in the season, but he was still raw. A wiry, unorthodox guard prospect who didn't cleanly project to the 1 or the 2, and not a player anyone saw as a sure thing or a future star. Even LA didn't have plans of handing him the franchise. They brought him there to be a contributor. His job was to get the offense started, keep moving the ball, and find his buckets in the flow of the game. And in his first year, that's exactly what he did. He was a quietly promising piece on a surprisingly competitive Clippers team, one of the only young guys on a squad filled with established veterans and experienced role players. There were no eyes or expectations on him, only resources and opportunity, and he took advantage of it. Lou Williams' slithery finishing, Pat Beverly's defensive aggression. He took note of it all, and in the meantime, he just kept playing his role. To the surprise of pretty much everyone, the Clippers were the 8th seed in the West when the season came to an end. That thrown together group of journeymen and forgotten stars had cultivated a culture built on high IQ basketball and toughness, and Shai was fitting in perfectly. Unfortunately, the first seed in the Western Conference was built on 4 first ballot Hall of Famers. No one thought the Clippers had a chance against the Warriors. No one thought anyone had a chance against those Warriors, but LA didn't care. They showed up with their roster full of overlooked players, and they competed. They stole Game 2 in Oakland, and then in Game 4, their rookie rose to the occasion. Shai gave them a little bit of everything: mid-range pull-ups, acrobatic layups, and a couple threes. By the end of the first quarter, he had 14 points, and when the final buzzer went off, he had built that number up to 25. But against that team, 25 wasn't enough. The Warriors won Game 4 and would go on to finish the Clips out in 6, which all things considered was really promising. They showed who they are when it mattered most. Their first-year guard proved that he had the skills and the intangibles to go head-to-head with the best team in the league. Things were looking up, and one season into Shai's career, a pattern was forming. First, he was a quick study. Whoever was around him became a teacher because he treated them like one. And when he failed, he came back the next game like it didn't happen. He did the same thing even when they weren't rewarded. But that offseason had a way of complicating things in LA. Fresh off his finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard informed the team he'd sign with them if they were able to get Paul George from the Thunder, and that was an opportunity they couldn't pass up. So they packaged Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and a definitely responsible number of draft picks to make their all-star duo happen. And just like that, SGA's time in Los Angeles was over. Once again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was coming to a fan base that was still reeling from a recent wound, but this one was even more visceral. For 3 years after Kevin Durant left for Golden State, the Thunder did what they could to keep the team competitive. Russell Westbrook turned into a one-man army for 1 year. Then they added Paul George, and for a second, it looked like they might reform into a contender once again, until Damian Lillard ended that era in Portland by making a shot from Canada. After that wave, they knew it was over, and in the eyes of fans who were acutely aware of what it meant to be a small market team, they were in for a long rebuild. But the good news was, they had gotten some real building blocks back from their off-season trades. SGA was the most exciting young prospect they had now. In exchange for the heart and soul of their team, they got an aging Chris Paul. No one expected anything from them, but the thing was, Chris Paul still had it. And sure enough, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had improved. He was getting to his spots with confidence, arriving with composure, and showing signs of frightening potential. And behind closed doors, Chris Paul was paying attention. The point guard saw it before anyone else, and while he was there, he did everything he could to help him. CP3 watched film with him, worked with him after practice, anything he could to push him towards his potential. For the second year in a row, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and his team were outperforming expectations, and for the second year in a row, he was an underdog in the playoffs against part of OKC's lost core. This time it was James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and the Houston Rockets, a star-studded reflection of his new team's haunted past, and the early signs weren't great. The Rockets blew the Thunder out in games 1 and 2, but right as pundits started projecting Houston's next matchup, Oklahoma City responded. Shai delivered a two-way masterpiece in game 3, then the vets took care of game 4, and from there, we had a series. In the end, it came down to the final possession of game 7, and sure enough, the ball found its way to the cool-headed Canadian. CP3 started the drive and lost the ball. SGA picked it up and found the hottest shooter in the game, a young rookie by the name of Lou Dort. For a brief second, you could feel the emotional catharsis Oklahoma City never thought they'd get. Then, James Harden smothered any doubt. No game 7 loss that goes down to the wire is ever easy, but the more the fans sat with it, the less discouraging it got. The city watched a team that was supposed to be in the lottery go toe-to-toe with a proven contender. They weren't where they wanted to be, but the guy who was going to lead them there was already wearing the jersey. They just didn't know it yet. Chris Paul and every other veteran on the team were traded to teams more immediately ready to compete. As OKC geared up for a long rebuild, the mentor moved on, and the infrastructure around him was torn down. Still, we have another important piece of evidence. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a mentor. I mean, that's not that rare, really. Countless stars and non-stars learned under a great player, but even while figuring out how to play and grow in a new setting, he stayed on top of his responsibilities to himself and his teammates. That's another piece of the puzzle. For the next 2 years, OKC lost the vast majority of their games with experimental rosters and super young rotations, and SGA continued doing the only thing he's done in this video. He got better. In his third season, he crossed the 20-point per game threshold, and in his fourth, he increased his scoring average again. But both times, no one really noticed, and you couldn't blame them. He was taking consistent strides, but they were so consistent, they were almost impossible to single out. It was like trying to notice the individual turns of a moving tire. Besides, this was happening in games few people were watching. In 2021 and 2022, the Thunder had a combined 8 nationally televised games. Outside of the League Pass sickos and the people in Oklahoma City, viewership was scarce. Both of those years, he stayed the course without much recognition. And in 2023, he broke out, undeniably. Oklahoma City wasn't a contender yet, but they were starting to feel relevant again, a team to beat in a typically crowded West. And the main reason was that SGA wasn't a solid 20-point per game scorer anymore. He was averaging 31, and he was doing it in the least modern way possible. Nearly 10 years after the three-point revolution took place, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was stamping himself as an all-NBA talent by living in the mid-range. At a time when entire teams were cutting the shot out of their strategies, Shai was averaging 31 in a way that made no sense on paper, but complete sense on film, and nobody was going to argue him out proud of it. You know what? Add that to the list. He's not moved by recognition, and he stays true to his own compass. That year, the Thunder pulled off an eyebrow-raising win over the Pelicans in the first round of the play-in, before falling to the Timberwolves in the next. But everyone had taken notice of them and their young star. Next season, Oklahoma City was given 25 nationally televised games. The people were paying attention now, and they wanted to see what SGA's next step looked like. Heading into 2024, the Thunder and their super score weren't sneaking up on anyone. Every team was shifting the defense to him and drafting scouting reports around him. From a logical perspective, that should have had an effect. More eyes, more defenders, and more pressure. Those circumstances result in a slight dip in production all the time. Somehow, some way, the trend continued. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got a little bit better one more time, vaulted himself into the MVP conversation, and best of all, OKC had built a contending team around him. The Thunder won 57 games, and in the playoffs, he left no room for doubt about his current standing. After quickly dismissing the Pelicans in 4 games, Shai went shot for shot with Luka Doncic in round 2, giving us one of the best second round series we'd seen. For 5 games, SGA proved that he was right on the level of Kyrie Irving and Luka, and in a do-or-die game 6, he looked unstoppable down the stretch. Pull-up threes to quiet the crowd, tough fadeaways over outstretched contests, even timely lobs. It was all there. On that specific night though, it wasn't enough. A foul on the last possession ended their season a little bit early, and then the cycle started all over again. The summer passed, Shai competed in the Olympics, and when the NBA season started back up, he was better. A better scorer, a better passer, a better shooter, a more complete player in every way. There was no answer for him or the Thunder, and when the regular season came to a close, the team had won 68 games, and SGA was the league's new MVP, and he only picked up steam in the playoffs. Against Denver, OKC needed their star to step up, and he did. He led the series in scoring on elite efficiency to lead the Thunder past Yogic and the Nuggets. Soon enough, they were in the finals, facing off against a team that had harnessed magic all season. That's the prototypical foil for a season as seemingly perfect as this one, and for Shai and the Thunder, it almost played out that way. In Game 4, the Thunder were down 2-1, losing by 2 points in the 4th quarter, in front of a deafening Indiana crowd, and then SGA took over. He scored 15 points in the final 5 minutes to seal the win, and 3 games later, he was standing on the stage with 2 trophies in his hand and confetti on his shoulders. It was the finale of one of the greatest guard seasons of all time. 68 wins, an MVP, a championship, and a finals MVP to make up an entire Hall of Fame case. At some point, the trajectory had to flatten out, but this season, it hasn't. He's better, again. He is the most game winners in the final 10 seconds of anyone this decade. He's on pace to tie Steph Curry's record for best true shooting percentage of any guard to average over 30 points per game in a season. And again, he broke a record set by Wilt Chamberlain that seemed untouchable only a few years ago. His games reached historic heights, and when we look back over the checklist we've built up, there's something we have to say. None of our realizations explain it. Being a quick study, learning under a mentor, sticking to your guns. Those are generic pieces of advice that almost everyone's tried at some point or another. And the closer we look, the more singular and mundane the realization gets. Even during those summers that he improved so rapidly, he's not training at a state-of-the-art facility. He's going home and working on his game with a group of friends he's always had. There's no extra bit of context that explains his rise. He didn't reinvent basketball or push it in a new direction. It's all old-fashioned, steady, and linear. And we'll be honest, in an era of content creation where everything is about finding the hidden insight, that's a difficult story to cover. So what does consistency mean? I think we found out, but it's frustratingly paradoxical. As far as we can tell, there's no secret ingredient, no hidden formula, no shortcut Shai quietly discovered. He just put his head down, trusted himself, and kept going. And now he's on the shortlist for best basketball player in the world. So it means exactly that. Nothing special, nothing clever, just time and showing up for it. That's the paradox. The answer is obvious and the execution is everything.
I have answers to the test, but I gotta see the questions first.